Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Thanks for showing up for another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. My guest today is Ray Glymph. You're going to get a great story on this episode. At one point, Ray was homeless. Now he's up over 100 doors, but it's not about the doors. That's just part of the journey. And you're going to find that Ray did it all on his own. He figured it out by just hitting the ground running. Let's get to the show. This is episode 199 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Ray Glymph. Ray is a real estate investor and mentor who started with nothing and has transformed his passion for real estate and real estate investing into over 100 doors and a mentorship program to help others do the same. Ray, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and congratulations on 199. So close.
I know. We're getting there. It's crazy. But if you think back on your journey, when was the first time that you thought about real estate as something that could help you in life?
You know, I looked at it always as something just to live in and just a place to live in. And I think I'm one of those people that became what we call accidental investors. Yeah. I actually purchased one of my first homes, and I was at the bar with a buddy of mine, and he was like, "Hey, Ray, he was a law school student. He said, hey, I need a place to move to. My house is like getting condemned. I need a place to move to." I was like, how much you paying? And he, at the time, it was like half my mortgage. And I was like, well, I got a basement. You can stay in. He was like, really? And before you know it, I was like, man, this guy just moved into a basement space that I'm not using. And all of a sudden, half my mortgage is paid. So the light bulb kind of clicked in. That was my first step.
That's actually a really common thread. For people going back 10, 20, 30 years, they were doing real estate before terminology called things house hacking or all of these things. They were just doing smart things to make money. Yeah. But then once you saw that basement, did you start to think, wait, I could do this more times on more properties? Yeah.
And even from the basement, once he actually moved out, this thing, I heard about it a while ago, and it became known as Airbnb. I actually Airbnb'd the basement of my space, and it actually ended up paying the full mortgage. So at that point, I said, wow, like I'm living, mortgage free. That extra capital I could use to further invest and scale this thing. I like how this is going. And that was my first taste of real estate.
Yeah. Before that, though, you were never like, one day I'd like to invest in real estate. It was just something that popped up.
Absolutely not. I always thought it was, too expensive to get into real estate, or, it was so prohibitive, and it was only for certain people. And before, there were podcasts like this, there weren't many resources. I guess you could dive into a book, but there weren't many resources. So I actually learned about real estate investing. It just wasn't in my reach.
Yeah. And I mean, isn't part of what you want to do now is to expose that to people who maybe thought it was out of reach for them? Because it's really not when you think about it. And of course, you do need capital. There's definitely ways to acquire real estate without capital, but learning about it is what sets the groundwork. And I guess you actually started learning more about it after you kind of, like you said, you fell into it. Yeah.
And then once I fell into it, it became, what else can I learn? And I think that's one of the most important parts of the journey. Everybody listening, you folks listening are here to learn something. So what else can I learn? What can I pick up to add to the skill set that I own?
Yeah. So after that first property, how did you start figuring out how you were going to get more properties? Because it sounds great, but then there's still the money that you need to get them, and then the deals to find, and kind of knowing about, more about real estate along the way.
And so I guess it goes back. It sounds like I have a drinking problem, but I don't. I promise you guys I don't. But I was back in the bar.
Are you going to go to another bar?
A great conversation, networking. That's one of the best skills of investor, networking. I was in a bar with about 7 or 8 of my friends, closest friends at the time. They were all different fields. They were all making way more money than me, attorneys and entrepreneurs of every sort. And they started throwing out some terms that we can, renovate this and refinance this. And we could each put in $5,000 each. And at that point, it's 40 grand, 50 grand, and we could purchase a property and get all our money back out of it and then have permanent income. And I was like, hey, fellas, I don't know what you're talking about, but I want in. And at that point, I started doing a little bit more research. I was 100% committed. I was working or I had owned businesses, but they were really not businesses. They were almost jobs for me, and I want to say I owned jobs at that point, and I wanted to kind of get away from those. And real estate seemed like a great way to get out of them. So I started doing some research. And when it came time to, get the guys together again and all, make our commitment and invest, everybody backed out. Everybody had their own reasons, but everybody backed out. Nobody went in. But at that point, I was already committed, and there was no stopping me.
Yeah. Did you find other people, or did you just do the next deal yourself?
No. So the first one I found, I did a deal, and I'll share the numbers with you guys because it's kind of crazy to look back at what real estate and how much is appreciated.
What area were you in at the time, and maybe you're still there?
Yeah. So I invested. My first house that I purchased was in West Virginia. My second one was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that second one was in Pittsburgh. I actually paid $25,000 for it. It was a wholesale deal. I found it on Craigslist of all places.
It does still exist.
It exists. These deals are, and then you can still find some kind of deals out there, but I would be more careful in today's market.
Yeah.
But it was from a wholesaler. I didn't know what a wholesaler was at the time. I thought this guy was going to run off with my money. Sure enough, I ended up getting a property, paid $25,000. It was in a terrible neighborhood. Didn't know any better. It was D-class property, had tons of rehab, but it was a learning experience. And I think that was the most powerful point of real estate, is a continual learning experience.
Well, I think that's the best way to look at it too. Like, okay, maybe now you wouldn't go and buy D-class unless you knew what you were doing for D-class, because I think it takes a certain type of investor to do it. But that's part of what, all of us are hoping to prevent other people from, because D-class looks sweet on cash flow.
Oh my God,
it looks like amazing. You're like, I'm getting a 2.8% rule on this. This is unbelievable. But of course, it comes with CapEx and neighborhood issues and tenancy issues. So how did you figure out what to do with that property and how to move forward? Because a lot of people would say, I messed up, it's 25 grand, I'm just going to leave it. And that becomes a problem with the neighborhood in general.
So I was already pot committed, ladies and gentlemen. It was no turning me down. It was a learning experience for me too, as far as the construction side, because I did need some rehab. Yeah. So I ended up doing a rehab all myself. I think I overdeveloped it. I know I overdeveloped it. I put, materials in there that you wouldn't want to put, especially in a D-class rental. I put it in there as if I was living there, though. So that was one of my mistakes that I made in the beginning of my journey.
Yeah.
But after all was said and done, I still remember the tenant, they paid, I think it was $1,000. So I had that 2% rule. Didn't even know what 2% rule was, but I'm like, man, this is cash flow. This is amazing. I don't have to cook anything. Don't have to sling any drinks or make it.
Yeah.
I'm making money on the side. And at that point, I thought, man, I made it, And I again said, okay, how can I replicate this? Like, can I do this again? So lo and behold, I found another property, $25,000. Put another 25, 30 into it. It was cash flow, another $1,000. So I'm making $2,000 a month at that time. It's great money. And ran into a headache tenant. They kind of destroyed the place. And that was when that was the first like lesson of like, oh man,
it's not all silver lining here.
Yeah. And so it was a learning lesson, but it was a great experience, I'll say. And those properties, I know I look back at the other property, I think it just sold for about $200,000.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's the appreciation in the market. And that's the growth of it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have bumped into that. You can get like a first couple and you think, oh, well, this is going to be easy. I'll just do this, 20 times in a row. And of course, tenants in all classes, D, C, B, and A, you can always get someone who loses a job or decides not to pay, or you were so excited to take a tenant that you just take the first one. Yeah. How was it for you when you first started? It's hard, especially in D class, because everybody has a really good story.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you a good story to get in there. And also one of the great powers of real estate is that you can give somebody a break when you're the owner. So it's like they like to pull the heartstrings, and in D, that's a tough thing. So you can get great tenants and you can get bad tenants, in all classes. How did you figure out that part? Because I find that part never gets easier.
I didn't figure that out until maybe 3 years into my journey. I'll be honest with you guys. It was like a judgment of character. It was more of a handshake. I wouldn't do any background check or credit check. I didn't have those resources handy, didn't know any better. So for me, it was like, okay, this person seems like they're up to date. Maybe they can pay. I got paycheck stubs, but that was all I had. And, you can fake paycheck stubs.
Yeah. But that is more common in D plus areas. Like a lot of people say you got to have all these systems, but that's not really the tenant base. A lot of people are, working week to week or month to month. So you really do have to do a handshake eyeball, idea and say, hey, is this going to work, and see what happens. So tell us what happened when you started to figure out it wasn't going to be that easy.
So at that point, I'm like, man, I'm almost ready to like exit this market. Like this is pretty rough. I had tenants not pay. I had one tenant just vacate the property. We had some hoarders go in there. So we ran into all types of scenarios. We had squatters. So I ran into a lot in that first 2-3 year period, and it was a learning lesson. However, each time I was able to recover. And I think that's the biggest thing. Some people would have threw their hands up and just walked away from industry as a whole. And we've seen people probably that have done it. But I was able to recover and continue to invest. And eventually an opportunity came up for me to scale and go into a bigger multifamily. And I ended up selling those 2 single family houses.
Yeah. And when you sold those, did you even really care about the profit? It was like you're kind of selling headaches, because I try to tell people, like, a lot of times some of the properties you acquire in your first few years, they're not going to be properties you want to keep. So if you sell them and you lose a little money or you make a little money, that's not really the important point. The important point is exactly what you want to do. You're going to take that money and put it into a better asset because you know more now. Yeah.
I think people need to understand that too. Real estate is an investment, right? When I tell people there's no emotion in this game, it is a numbers game.
I agree.
What makes the most sense, right?
Yeah.
Right. I can put 50,000 in the stock market. I can put 50,000 piece of real estate. I can put it anywhere. Where am I going to get the most and the best return for my money? Right. And so when I look at deals, or I look at houses or apartments or whatever it may be, where am I going to get the best return for my money? And at that time, it was, hey, if I sell this is going to give me an opportunity to make more money in the end game.
Yeah.
Which it has.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's what I think is smart. I think everybody should really always be looking at their whole portfolio and trying to optimize it and say, like, okay, even when you get up to 100 doors, maybe 20 of those doors are bad.
Yeah.
And that goes to the emotional attachment. You can't be so attached to real estate that you let it keep going down in rent or keep getting worse tenants, and then it's vacant and now you can't sell it. Also, because nobody wants it vacant unless you're going to give them a big discount.
And that's the point of, buying correctly too, because if you can't sell it at all, then you're in a bigger hole at that point. So you have to make sure that you buy wise.
Yeah, and that also goes to knowing what to do on the upkeep. Like you said, there were some renovations to do. If you do have to sell and you want to sell it and it's not renovated, you're not going to get the price, that you want. Like a lot of off-market sellers hope that they're getting, what quote market value is, but they've never done any upgrades, so it's well below market value.
Yeah, and that even appeals to attracting tenants too. Those upgrades that you do. What class of tenant do you want to attract? Even if you're in a D neighborhood, you can attract C tenants. If you're in a B neighborhood, you can attract B tenants if you have the right amenities. If your place looks good enough, you might be able to attract some quality tenants.
Yeah. And look, a lot of the times, and maybe you've had this experience already because you've done so many units over your time. A lot of times, if you start to upgrade, then some neighbors may say, yeah, you know what, maybe I should put in just 4,000 or 5,000, get the exterior. And then it kind of takes an effect where more people are going to pay attention. D to D plus doesn't turn over into a C overnight. But if a few people start to get on that and say, like, wow, it is starting to feel better, like you said, you're going to bring a little bit better on the tenancies, and it's going to come a little bit more reliable and hopefully help everybody around there.
Yeah. And so that's the point of being an investor, is you start the seed. And the investor who starts it on an ugly street, right? Usually we buy the best house on the ugliest house on the nicest street. But sometimes if you start on an ugly street and you can kick the can and get it rolling, you'll be surprised at the returns that you'll get in the end game, right? Yeah. So a lot of investing is, a lot of the sexy, okay, I want to buy this house. But sometimes you got to get down to the nitty gritty. And if you can develop just one house on the street, and sometimes it might be developing 2 or 3 or 4 houses,
right?
And to get that value up, and we've done it. I'm doing it now at this point where I found a lot of land. We have 4 or 5 houses on it now. Other people are starting to fix their houses. Other investors are coming in because they've seen what's happening. So
and you can set the appraisal values for yourself moving forward. That's why it's so good to cluster properties near each other. If you have 4 on the block, because like you said, you renovate one, then the other people are like, hey, well, he'll pay me a good price for me to leave and he'll do a renovation. It's a win-win. But then you decide to sell the first, so you create an appraisal value. Now you can burr the other ones and hold on to them with the refinance. So there's a lot of things that people don't think. If you can get lower priced properties and get as many together as possible, you can really help your own value by mix and matching what you're doing with them, right?
Yeah. And so that's the thing, like real estate is very simplistic a lot of people overcomplicate. And I think
Oh, yeah.
on a high level, be very simplistic with it, right? You want to underwrite every deal, do your due diligence, but it is a very simplistic game.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I learned from my dad before the internet, so I was walking houses as a kid, and I still walk houses the same way now. Don't you? I mean, I can just tell from your personality. When you're looking at a house, you're going to look at the underwriting, but sometimes you just get a vibe for like, hey, I think I'm going to beat the neighborhood. Like, this neighborhood is going to be the one that's going to come up. And I've always been good at buying. Is that how it's worked for you too? You want to use your personal stuff.
Investors, we invest for not what is, but what will be or what can be. Sometimes it can lead for your downfall. Now, don't get me wrong. But for the most part, we invest for what can be. And we're thinking not just right now. It's an investment. It's not going to bear fruit. And sometimes you can bear fruit immediately. But the real fruit comes in at 5, 10, 20-year hold time. We look at a lot of guys who are in real estate that are bigger in real estate. They didn't get there in 5 years, right? A lot of people you hear, okay, back in 2008 is where I made it. A lot of my that's a long period of time away.
Yeah.
So a lot of real estate investors, it took them time to get to where they are. So we're looking at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I'll share with you guys, I just bought a property. I was going to flip it, right? Fix and flip all day. Easy turnkey. They just announced that they're doing a huge development in the area. Oh man, now that just changes my game. I can't flip this anymore. I'm going to hold on to this because, I can make, 50, 60K right now on a fix and flip, or do I cash flow, hold it for an eventual 5, 10 years and then make an extra 200,000 on it?
Right. Yeah. And you can spend less on the reno because you learned your lesson on the first one, not to over renovate, for it. So if you're, for listeners out there who are new to it and maybe you're thinking about flipping and deciding if they're rent, it's a different product. If you're flipping to sell, of course, you're going to go a little bit higher on the finishes. And if you're flipping to rent, you want to be more durable because you're going to have to fix some stuff along the way. So that probably helped you to find out though in the middle, so you can change strategy while you're going.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And I don't want people to overlook that. Always know what your end client is, right? Yeah. Who is my buyer or renter? Who is that person? If I'm in a C neighborhood and I want to rent to a B, I might need to put a little bit nicer finishes to attract that quality tenant, right? Because if you have a better product, it's going to be in higher demand usually.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing when you can get it, you have a neighborhood where there's not a lot of garages and then you do get a garage, then you're going to have a huge upswing. Same with smaller backyards, especially even in city environments. If you can get that little backyard, huge windfall over what somebody else can get. And I think those are the things that, as smart investors, when you're canvassing neighborhoods, talking to people, you're looking for the ones that, the regular investor from out of town doesn't know. He's just looking at aerial views or Google, but you say, oh no, that has the extra, side room. You're getting an enhanced product for a lower price.
And I love what you just brought about of, the investor who's not local. I love investing in my local market. Right. Because I know my market like nobody from out of state would know my market.
Right.
And so one of the first mistakes I bought is I looked at comps of what other houses were selling for. If you went across the bridge, houses were selling for 200, 300, 400,000. I'm like, man, this house right across the bridge, only 25, man, I can make a killing with this. I didn't know that across the bridge was the bad side of town.
Yeah.
Right. So being a local has its competitive advantages.
Yeah, I think so. And I think real estate in general is always a local business. If you're a local home buyer, local wholesaler, local flipper, you're always going to do better. And it actually goes back to the thing we were laughing about in the beginning where you're saying like, oh, no, I'm not, always at a bar. But it's about networking and relationships. Like you said, when you build the relationships in the community, you may get that tip off that like, hey, a Home Depot's coming. No one knows yet. And then you can start buying. But it's same as you said, where the block turns. So I'm very familiar with Philadelphia. I live in New Jersey. Philadelphia, the block turns on a corner. You can be 4 houses away and one can be appreciating and one is never going to appreciate. And only locals know that. So it's almost funny when non-local money comes in because they're going to overpay. And you can be in there getting the better deals then.
And then let's even talk about the networking aspect. I want to share with you folks the power of, just putting yourself in a room and being in real estate. And so I went to the city. This has literally just happened this week.
Yeah.
I went to the city on Monday. I have a contractor. He's working on a project. He needs the electric turned on. He's been going to the city. I went to the city. I got connections there. I went to them, said, hey, I just need this power turned on. They said, okay, we'll get it turned on for you guys Thursday. I'm like, okay, well, great. Now I guess I had to be there. I told him while I was there, I'm like, hey, look, I'm looking to buy any like condemned or hassle houses that you guys have as well. The guy says, okay, yeah, I'll send you a list, no problem. But what I didn't know is that the lady that was at the receptionist, she overheard me. And after I left, she called me and she said, hey, Ray, I overheard you. And I don't know if you got the list from the city, but I know somebody right now looking to sell a property that's about to get condemned. This guy has so many cats in there, probably smells terrible. Yeah. She wants out of this thing, right? That is the power of that network and putting yourself out there. It doesn't have to be at a bar, but you have to manifest. You have to put it out there. Let people know that, hey, look, I am looking to buy actively. I'm looking to sell. I am an investor, right? And so whether it be on social media, I know some people can't post on social media, but whether it be putting it out there on social media, let people know what you are doing. I've got so many deals just from people saying, oh, Ray, I see that you buy or that you rent or you sell real estate.
It's a great point. I think if everyone doesn't know what your buy box is, you're losing deals. Yeah. You know, like you said, for like, you know, on market real estate agents, they always say, don't be a secret agent. It's the same for investors. How can you be an investor in your neighborhood if nobody knows that you're the person who's taking down all these deals? And like you said, over time, you develop a very, very good amount of trust in the neighborhood. So that person at the city can say, well, I already know Ray. I'm just going to call him. Yeah. Like, and they know you'll take care of a Cappy house. Mm-hmm. And they already know it's going to be at a really good price for you because they want to get rid of it. Yep. You know, and don't you think that part of off-market acquisition, this can really help people? It's never, to me, it's very rarely about the price. People always think it's about the price because they're watching TikTok all the time and everything's a cash deal. But a lot of times you're just taking a problem away from someone. And if you can solve their problem, you can get it for a really, really good deal. Love that. No one wants to deal with the cat or the hoarders, but if you can, you'll win, right?
So real estate as an investor, you are solving a problem. As an investor as a whole, in any company, you are solving a problem to the masses, right? So if you want to be successful, how big of a problem can you solve? Yeah. Right? And then how can you solve that? Sometimes it could be without using your own money. I've taken on deals where I just did a multi-million-dollar deal. We took it over. We paid $10,000 at the closing table to take over this person's problem, right? He just had poor management. It was as simple as a management solution. But we're able to go in and solve the problem. So how can you solve the problem? You can make a lot of money just solving the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people will be surprised at how many landlords sell their properties at a huge discount just because they don't want to raise the tenant's rent.
They don't want to deal with it. Yeah,
like for years, they're just tired, and you're like, you go in the unit, you're like, I mean, these are in pretty good shape. Yeah. Like the tenants are nice. If you can, you know, you can't just raise them right to market rent. You have to get them up and explain it to them. But a lot of landlords, they just get older and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And as you said, you'll never meet them, you know, outside of on the market, which is not, you know, going to be the greatest thing. If everybody doesn't know that, hey, you're a local home buyer in the area and you sold Bob's home and Christine's home, and that's what helps you. Now you probably don't have to do anything. You could just go stand outside and people will go, oh, I have one for you next week, right?
The pipeline opens up so much more, right? Because it's at the end of the day, it is deal flow. And you want to touch, as an investor, you want to touch everything that goes out. You want your hands on it before anybody else. Because once it hits the market, to me, at this point in my career, it's too late. How did I miss this one?
Agree.
Man, how did I should have had my hands on this one, right? Yeah. As an investor, you want to be making those connections, talking to your neighbors, right? Be in a setting where you can talk to people. I read this in a book. I think it was like a Grant Cardone book. But he specified you are losing so much money, more than you think, by just saving on breakfast, right? Yeah. Go out to the coffee shop, go have breakfast, go get a coffee, spend a little bit of extra money, and make it as a networking experience. Go talk to the person at the coffee shop, become a regular there, so much that people know you. They know your buy box by the time. Yeah. And they're just selling coffee, but they're gonna be looking for you, and you are top of mind and top of funnel every time.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you're smart though. Also, you're also branding. I mean, your shirt, I've seen it on your social media too, because now you're giving someone the opportunity to say, "Hey, what's that about?" You don't even have to be the person who's like on a hard sell all the time. And I think people don't understand marketing that well.
Yeah.
If you're out around and they say, "Wait, there's the guy with the freedom. I don't know what he does," and then they look you up and they're like, "Oh, it's about houses." They're going to come to you, and I think these are the things that people are missing about what you can do. Like we're talking about it. You had a great point. If it cuts to the market, you're mad because you missed it. And what I even tell people when they're newer and they get on like a wholesaler's email list, I'm like, if you got the email, that's already third servings. Mm-hmm. They've already told everyone, and none of their best VIP investors wanted it. It could still be an okay deal, but they didn't want it.
Yeah,
like
you're just straight by that point.
at the very best case scenario.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, like, because even as a wholesaler, and I work closely with wholesalers, they're going to underwrite it for, hey, should I purchase this for myself first? Right? So they've already done it.
Right. It's not coming out if they like it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's staying in there. So should I purchase this first? Okay. No, can I wholesale it to some of my closest? No, They don't want to buy it? Okay, now let me put it out to market.
Right. And that's generally for the out-of-towners.
Yeah, exactly. You're not even from here. You don't even know the market. So
that's the funny thing that people don't realize. Like it will come out with a kind of out-of-towner price, and then it may come back and it may end up being a good deal again because they tried to get, too high and it comes back. But that's also about knowing your market and being really firm. After all your time in your market, someone can, a new wholesaler can come in, send you their, ludicrous repair thing in ARV, and you're like, that's not even close.
No.
Like you're kidding.
Yeah. And we said, I just walked the deal and I went direct to seller, and they sent me like a purchase price that was probably $30,000 above what anybody would pay that's in the market. Yeah. ARV that was nowhere close to what anybody would pay upon completion. And so you got to remember, and I just got off a phone call, just mentioned this, but you got to remember, everybody in this game is trying to sell you something. As their investor, you are the only one that can protect your butt. I don't care if it's the realtor that's your best friend and your BFF. They only get paid on commission if you buy. Yeah. I don't care if it's the title attorney and you guys play golf together. He doesn't get paid unless you close. The lawyers don't get paid. Nobody gets paid until you close. Insurance is just, insurance is all referrals. They don't get paid until you close. They don't care. You have to care more than anybody else about it.
Yeah. And if you get good and you're the one who can, I've always said, and I'm sure you know this, I can tell from how you talk about it, the more deals that you reject or say no to, the more trust you build in the community where, you're not someone who's always saying, you got to do it, get it. All the deals aren't good. Like you said, they're not. And when you're the area specialist, you can just, no, that's terrible. Yeah. They're going to come back to you later with the lower price, but you're like, no, well, I already know you're trying to fake me out. I know better. Yep. And that comes with time though. Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this episode with Ray Glymph. Remember, this is episode 199, so if you stick around to the end, you're going to find out who the guest is for episode 200. In the meantime, I want to remind you that if you're listening to this story, Ray just hit the streets. He was out there figuring out how to do it, making deals, shaking hands, making connections. And if you don't have those connections, you want to get to real estate investing meetups, which of course we run, but you can also use things like Deal Machine. I have a special code for you at dealmachine.com/Zen. You'll be able to sign up for a free trial, give the thing a test drive, and see if you like it. The thing that I thought was so transcendent in the last year about Deal Machine was that skip tracing was added automatically on the Pro, so you can just click in one button, send a postcard, give it a try. Let's get back to Ray. How long did it take you? I mean, I feel like I'm still learning. I'm like well more than 30 years into the game. But in the beginning, how hard was it to start to understand those things like repair costs and like your ARV when you don't have as much access back then and trying to figure out in a new neighborhood too? So
everything was, okay, I'll pay whatever because it made sense and I could afford it. That was my mentality at the time until I would say COVID. And COVID is when you really started paying attention like, man, this price isn't what it was. Like I paid $5,000 for a roof. I'm not paying $15,000 for a roof now.
Yeah.
We saw it happen just like, and that was like really the calling point. Before that, I had started to pay attention. Prices had started to creep up, but it was controllable. Like everything was measurable. But then during COVID, it really hit of like, man, these costs have like skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And that's when it became, all right, now you have to operate as an entrepreneur and you have to tame the beast. I have a maintenance, I have a budget. And don't be afraid. I think it's a great point for listeners too. Don't be afraid to tell contractors if they come back with a price of, hey, 7,000, hey, my budget on this thing is 5,000.
Yeah.
Can you work with me upon that? Right? Most of them might say yes. You will be pleasantly surprised. So as much as they need you just as much too, the contractors need you too,
Of course. Yeah.
So, working within that realm of, hey, this is what my budget is. These are what my numbers, and it is a numbers-based game again. These are my numbers. I need to stick to this. Hey, if you can't work beyond that, that's fine. I understand it. We'll get back to it. Also, prioritizing what needs to be done with what can be done. And I want to give you guys an example. I got a roof, has 5 years of life on it. I had a roofer go over. He was supposed to, look at the gutters. Hey, man, you need a new roof here. I know I need a new roof. I'm not going to pay for it right now, though.
Yeah.
Right? It's
not leaking. It's just leaking. Not good. Yeah.
Yes. So a savvy investor is going to say, okay, you know what? I got 5 years. So if I can put a new roof on, but then I'm cutting out 5 years on that new roof then.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
You know? So what can I do right now as an investor? So I'm going to start saving up, having a capital expenditure budget, and increase it maybe a little bit for savings to know when that roof is done, I know it's done. Right. Yeah. But you don't want to spend that money that is unnecessary. And I see a lot of investors, they'll go and they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to go in and gut this place. And guess what? You're going to rent it to a C tenant.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, they're calculating off per square foot. They don't know what they're doing with their costs. You made a great point about contractors that I wanted to highlight, because the way that you phrased it is so much better than most people do. A lot of people, a contractor will come back and say it's $7,000, and they'll say, oh, well, give me a discount. No one wants to give a discount. You don't phrase it like that. Your phrase was perfect. Look, I have $5,000 in my budget for this. Everything else is budget. If you can do it for that, awesome. If not, no problem at all. That's such a better way of delivering it. You're not asking for a favor. You're just saying, I need to do this for $5,000 because I have all this other stuff to do. If you can do it, cool. If not, I'll see you on the next one and you'll call them back. Mm-hmm. That's just, it's just a better placement. I think people ask contractors who are working hard all the time and are never great business people. So they're just not, you can't ask for a discount. Do you agree with that? I mean, I just got 100%. It from your phrase.
If you find a great contractor, A, treat them like gold, right? Because there are so many bad contractors out here. B, my contractors are my partners. I don't look at them as the guys that just work for me. They are my partners in this business. They keep this business going. When I need big things, those are the ones you call. Especially when you get into these bigger projects. If you got a framer, that framer is gold. If you got a roofer, that roofer is gold. Because when you need a roof done, you need it done fast. You want to be at the top of the mind, like, okay, Ray's project is going to come first because we work with Ray consistently. We know he's going to pay us. You have to have that reputation in the industry, right? Guard that reputation. And here's another thing I want to share with investors too. Contractors might be willing to work with you. And I've had times where I needed a contractor that, we had a big roof project and I was like, man, this is like beyond my CapEx. Need the roof done now. Hey, look, I'll give you $20,000 down for this roof. Can you take payments over the next 3 months for the remaining or something like that? They're willing to work with you. Just they are solving a problem. You are solving a problem. They need the work, right? So the thing I love about real estate, it is creative. And I correlate this to Monopoly because real estate is just like Monopoly anyway. People play within the rules of Monopoly, right? You roll the dice. When I play Monopoly, I get creative. Hey, look, I'll sell you this property, but I want 3 free passes on the property.
Yeah, yeah.
People never heard me. You want free passes? Yeah, let me land on it 3 times, and then after 3 times, you can collect rent from me. Maybe you give me half the amount of rent. Everything is negotiable. You have to be able to put out a solution.
Yeah. No, that goes back to what we said about buying homes. I mean, you're there to solve a problem, and there's lots of problems that you can solve of your own by thinking a little more creatively. Like you said, hey, $20,000 down, that's good for the roofer. You're not sneezing at that. You'll pay the last $10,000 in payments. They already know that you're good for it. But again, the more that you build those relationships with investors and with your service personnel, the better that you're going to be able to complete jobs. I always tell my service, like all of my subs who I work with the most, like, I don't just charge me what is reasonable. Like, I'm not going to debate it, but if you ever charge me something astronomical, we'll just never talk again.
Yep.
Like, I let them have it. I'm not going to go through it a lot. In the beginning, you have to, because you're trying to get away for it. After a while, I'm just like, Yeah, if you said it's five, it's five. You know, that's what the labor costs. And sometimes they'll eventually try to slip a couple past you, but then it's too late and you got to trade. And that's part of contractors and subcontractors because they never last.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You always need a backup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always think of it like basketball. You know, I've got the bench. You always need to have you got your point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. I need all of them on the bench also because they're not going to show up one day, and you just need to put the next one in. And that's really the more that you do renovations, even with rental properties. You need to have someone available to fix something.
Yeah, and that goes to your handyman. Even like making sure if you have a good handyman that's responsive, treat them like gold. Right?
Yeah.
Because there are other people that will snipe him immediately from you, snipe him or her, or, they are hard to replace. And if we look, the biggest trades right now are electricians, plumbers. Those are the highest in demand. If you can find somebody with that skill set, take care of them.
Yeah, and P.S., just for investors and even kids who are going into investing, like trades is definitely the way to go. It's outpacing college and everything right now. So as those businesses become even better organized, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for people to grow in those trades. And those trades are great as investors too. I mean, when an electrician wants to invest, it's great. You can do all of your own work for free and it's permitted. It's not fake work.
Yeah. And that's what I love. So even for electricians, teaching them the game of real estate.
Yeah.
Right. That is the value add for them. And for all of us, I mean, it's how much more can we learn? Where's the next value? Where's the next deal?
Yeah. I mean, it's insane that a contractor wouldn't be flipping houses. You know what I mean? Like that's like a realtor who has no investment properties. Like, what are you doing?
And so what happens is they get used. It's a quick high. I had this conversation the other day. It was a quick high of like, all right, well, I got this house done. I got my 10K, 50K, 100K, and I'm out. Right?
Yeah.
I want to keep working with this guy. Man, this guy's rolling the dough. They never ask, man, how do you keep getting this money though?
Yeah.
Right.
At least hop in on a JV with a project, to learn something. But part of that's on us though, to help tell them like, hey, you want a piece of this project too? It's not like I'm trying to get your work for less, but you need to learn this.
So I will say one of my best partner that I have right now, no knock to any of my other partners. I love you guys all. But my best partner right now I have is a GC.
Yeah. Right.
I go in, I say, hey, this is what we need. He knows the style, the scope that I usually work with. He gets it done. He gets a percentage of the property and the profit. We go on, we keep going. Right. So my job is to keep him busy. I'm acquiring more property. I focus on what my skill set is, which is acquiring a property. He focuses on his skill set, which is rehabbing them. And we continue to grow together. For all we know, the best partnership is with the builder and the investor. Yeah.
But that's great growth for tradespeople because they could start to get equity instead of just the pay. It is cool when you get the $9,000 job and you get paid, but then you're going running right to the next job.
Yeah,
you want something to be accumulating a little bit more passively, on the outside. And I think that that's really what everybody is looking for. When you got those first couple properties, though, did you think within 10 years you'd be over 100 properties and have done as much as you had?
No, and I want to share something with you guys. I didn't know what I had until I went to a conference. I went to a conference in Toronto, a multifamily conference, great conference. And I was sitting there, I was just talking to people. I'm like, yeah, I'm an investor. And they're like, yeah, how many doors do you have? I'm like, 100. I'm like, yeah, what about you? And they're like, 1, or I'm looking to buy. And I was like, wait, what? And everybody's like, man, you got 100? Like, how? And it didn't hit me until I left that, man, I have some. I've built some. I've been so focused on building this business, head in the sand, that analogy that I didn't look up and say like, man, I've really built something that is a beast, like property management at scale, maintenance at scale, all those things at scale, systems, right? That is what led to the success, systems.
Yeah. And are you staying just generally between West Virginia and Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania area?
Yep. I ventured to Ohio a little bit, but this is like my niche market. Like I know this market. So, if you look at West Virginia, and I'll share this with you too, this is how specific and how local real estate is. If you look at West Virginia, the whole state is on decline except for 2 areas. And one of them is my area. Yeah. Right. And I know the niche market. I know what people are looking for. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I think, the trio of states there, especially where Pittsburgh is in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio, you're in very, quote, affordable markets where there's a lot of B, C, D that can go up because there's definitely going to be more money going in. And don't you find it cool to be a participant in helping, neighborhoods go from C to C plus, and then like it's a B minus one year, and you're like, wow,
It's
like
amazing.
10 years ago, this was a
amazing
disaster.
to see like the growth of, and one of the buildings I bought, my first building, multifamily building that I bought with the sale of those 2 properties I told you.
Oh, right.
Was in a D area, fellas, ladies and gentlemen. Like it was homeless population, and now to see it becoming, I would say right now it's like a B minus neighborhood now.
Wow.
Like to see the growth of it, and it's a downtown market, to see what it's become now, and to see where it's still a lot of growth left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The funny thing, I think, for people who don't, stay in the same area, they overthink the word gentrification. Like what you're talking about is gentrification, but I doubt that the neighborhood has changed that much. Like it's not always people getting pushed out of the neighborhood. That it does happen. Mm-hmm. That definitely does happen. But when a neighborhood goes from D plus slowly to C, most of the people are staying there. Some may not be able to go up, but it's not going from D to B, so it becomes unaffordable. It's slowly helping everybody raise the value for the people who own things there, so they're getting more equity as you help renovate the properties there. Yeah,
and here's the thing. I think COVID kind of accelerated a lot of that too, right? Because we saw raises in taxes, insurance, utility costs, maintenance costs. All those costs went up. So you have what we call our legacy landlords. You have the landlords who they were afraid to raise rent, and they weren't going to do anything, and they weren't going to repair anything. And they're kind of just fading out of existence and going into retirement and just letting those great assets that they kind of let depreciate and fall. They're letting those go. And new investors are coming in with the new lifeblood and saying, hey, look, let's go. Let's fix these properties. Let's add some value. And that's where we see the biggest growth, I think.
Yeah, but don't you think, like, especially you're working with investors, you have mentees that you're trying to help. I think that they really need to understand what they're getting into if they're going to be a landlord, because being a landlord for someone is you're allowing them to caretake your house and you're helping them. It's supposed to be a cooperative relationship, but when you take the kind of like business end of it, like if you look at all the hedge funds buying homes, it's like, I don't think someone who's not good with people, they're not going to be a good landlord. They're probably not even going to be able to manage their manager well. Yeah. So how do you deal with that when you're kind of like, do you want the income, but you have to be a landlord, because it's not easy.
Yeah. One, you got to be a good person. I think this all correlates to being a good person at the end of the day. Like you can have the nicest asset, you can have the great location, but if you're not a good person and you don't take care of your property and you become a slumlord, nobody's going to want to rent from you, right? You're going to attract the low quality tenants. So that is kind of the thing, is you want to treat people respectfully. And my story was I was homeless when we were young. So I know what it's like. Like we lived in houses where, there were rats crawling the walls, and my family was clean, but we had roaches, and it just wasn't something that I wanted to grow up around. I didn't want my family to grow up around. The people that I rent to, I don't want to be around. So I think it's first being a good person, and then wanting people to do better too. Just because you're in a D neighborhood or a C neighborhood, I know we keep talking about it, but just because you're in a neighborhood doesn't mean you should live substandard as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of taking on the privilege of being, great, we made it, we're able to own properties, but you want to be able to give it back. So you work in this kind of cooperability to make it, hey, what's going wrong? Because I just going through forums for years of watching landlords complain, more than 50% of landlords' complaints are their fault. They're complaining about the tenant, and they're like, oh, they keep saying things keep breaking. And you're like, well, why did things keep breaking? It's because you didn't fix things on the way in. Yep. And now you're trying to put it on them that they're breaking things. They're not breaking things. You just have a very not good property. Yeah.
And some of my best purchases have been when I fix things from the beginning. And
always.
And then great. I pretty much now I'm capitalizing on that CapEx that I spent earlier. Now I'm getting that back, right? So when we fix things, try to fix it right, fix it the first time. That goes back to your handyman and also to your tenant profile too, making sure that you do properly vet your tenants and do your due diligence. But once you fix it, if it's fixed right, it should be able to, you'll get depreciation over a couple of years. Things do break. Yeah. But you should be able to have a team that's able to take care of it, and the property should be fruitful. Here's the thing. 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time out of 100, the market will save you an appreciation. Yeah. Right? Rents will continue to go up. I think even whatever administration you voted for doesn't even matter. Rent's going to continue to go up.
It's going to still go up. You're going to earn value in America.
Right?
Yep.
the thing is, the rent will save, the market most of the time will save if you are in a good market.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you don't do the repairs, then you get a big, oh, now I need to do a furnace, a new furnace in the winter, and you don't have any money because they're not keeping reserves. I mean, these are the things that people need to be aware of. Like, it's not always going to be smooth. It's a great point. I agree. I think you should do everything within reason up front. If you have 10 years left on a furnace, you're not going to trade that out. You wait till the furnace breaks. But if it's about to die, it's going to break. So you need to do it then, because part of what you want and what's on your shirt for the people who are just listening is freedom. Everybody's chasing time freedom, but a lot of people get into real estate and then they're self-managing, 30 units and they're not renovating them. So they're getting calls literally every single night. That's not freedom. Yeah. It's not at all. And you're going to have to pay for all those calls. So if you do all the work up front, you're at least hedging your bets that you're going to get less calls and they're going to have a better experience. So you're going to have more freedom to, get other properties, spend time with your family. Yeah.
And you just want to be aware as a landlord of what's coming. You need to be aware what's happening with your property, what's happening with your investment. Yeah. Right. So if that HVAC, it's going to go out soon, start saving, right? Yeah. Maybe you could save it for another year, right? I got a roof right now.
But be prepared.
Yes, I got a roof right now. This roof got 1 year. I know I got to put that money out, right? Yeah. But I'm prepared for that. So you need to make sure that you are prepared for whatever is coming and then do the necessary thing. Cheapest is not always best. I know some landlords want to go cheap. Cheapest is not always best. You want quality. You want to make sure your things last, especially those capital expenditures, your roof, hot water tank, your furnace. You need to make your flooring, even your flooring. Sometimes it's not the best to go cheap on your flooring.
Flooring because then you're going to have to do it every year.
Oh, my God.
You know what I mean?
It used to be, you can throw a new flooring, new carpet in for $300, $500. You're looking at $1,500 now. Yeah, $2,000. So do it right.
And that's where you learn about materials, though, because there's a lot of good, durable materials for rental properties that look great now. It used to not be like that. You used to have just like crappy linoleum, and you're like, I'm just stuck with this. Now, I mean, you can get LVP that looks phenomenal. It looks like wood. No one even knows that it's not wood. So what they have for cost is so much better now. But as you said, we've all found out during the pandemic, like costs of stuff went up. Yeah, I mean, doing a renovation's not cheap.
Laminate, I remember I used to get it for about $1.79, $1.99. We're at on the low end $3.49 to $2.99, and so at this point we're almost buying wholesale to try to get those prices back. And that's what happens when you get to scale. If you guys have 5-10 units, if you get to that point, just start going wholesale. Yeah, I hate to say it, stop going to Lowe's. If you need lights, go from Amazon. If you need fixtures, Amazon.
Oh, yeah. I order all fixtures from Amazon. It's just easier, for whatever he says about Amazon. I'm just trying to be efficient, as an investor, and I'm trying to get stuff to the properties as fast as possible. So you have to use the best resources available to help you do that. So what's your plans for the future? You've obviously had a pretty good run so far. Where do you want to go from here? Are you buying larger multifamily now? And do you want to get even bigger into larger apartments?
I think this is the thing. After 100 doors, everybody gets into larger. I don't want to go any bigger, I think. I think right now I've got to a very comfortable scale where right now if I was to stop, I live a very comfortable life for the rest of the world. Yeah. My point now is to do projects that have high value, right? So I'm buying even better than I was before. And I think, COVID high interest rates forced us to get to that mentality too.
For sure.
And then my other buying strategies is with partners where I don't have to manage the property as much, or I'm not managing construction as much. I kind of want to take my foot off the gas, but keep it on still. So I'm on autopilot is what I like to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, every year that I get older, I get a little bit more passive in my investments, but I'm not stopping at all. I'm just reconfiguring how much time I'm spending in it, like you said, because you have other things to manage, but you're also trying to build other things along the way because you're trying to help other investors do the same as you did, correct?
Yeah. The goal right now is to help as many people as possible because, and I'm sure for you and your journey, there was no podcast.
Nope. There was my dad talking to me in the car about everything about money and real estate and dragging me through foreclosed homes and yard sales for years.
And most people didn't have that. So now there are so many educational tools out there. You are a fool if you don't take advantage of them.
Yeah, and you said it at the beginning because you were meeting up with people, but the podcasts are great. Books are amazing. You can learn so much, but you won't really understand them until you know other investors.
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of words. Like it's like a video game. It's like if you running numbers on properties and you're not looking at properties. You don't even know what the numbers mean.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what 100K smells like in one area versus the other. You have to go out and get those reps. So you can listen to us here, take all this great advice, but also know investors, because once you know investors, you build the relationships and you learn stuff every day from other investors, no matter how old you are.
Yeah. And it's very easy to pick apart in this game who is really investing and the people that pretend to be investing and sitting on a solid. You can tell very easily who the real people are in this game.
Yeah, and you only can once you get into the circles to see. But if you're looking from afar, sure, lots of stuff looks cool on TikTok, but it's not. It's just good production value.
You see some of this stuff, and it's just like, I can't believe that person just said that.
I know. Yeah, but for an outsider looking at it, like, oh, look, it looks so great. They're just like missing the words, or the fact that they're using the wrong words.
Yep.
Well, this has been awesome, Ray. Where's the best place for people to get in touch with you if they want to get some mentorship for you and follow you, find out what you're doing?
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My name, Ray Glymph, Glymph. Just send me a DM. I'll respond. I'm just a regular guy, ladies and gentlemen. I just do real estate, so I'll send you a message back. No worries.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Ray, I really appreciate it. I'm glad we got this on, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
And congratulations again. Episode 200 coming next, ladies and gentlemen.
It's coming next. You got it. All right. Awesome, man. That was Ray Glymph. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for sticking around so you can find out who the guest is for episode 200 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. It's unbelievable that we're at 200 already. And my guest for the next episode is none other than, and also it's a second appearance, the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast and On the Market, and an absolute wizard in the real estate investing space. It's Dave Meyer. I can't wait for you to hear this show. We recorded it the day after the election, so we talk about that, and this is a full go. Episode 200 coming at you next time you load up your podcast with Dave Meyer of Bigger Pockets.